I don't want to, no, you can interrupt anytime. I don't want to interrupt your workflow, but I was wondering if you had any advice on how to plan a short story. I never know when one is done and tend to want to turn them into novels. Yes, and I used to joke for a long time that I was, instead of writing short stories, I was writing rambling medium sized stories. Um, and the biggest thing is going to be the least helpful, I think, in terms of what you're hearing, and that is that you kind of have to keep writing short stories before you get a feel for how long they're going to be. So it's almost like the advice of, well, how do I write like a really good steampunk story? And the answer is, well, you got to write several kind of bad steampunk stories and kind of get a feel for what you're doing wrong, and then work your way into a good one. So short stories are kind of the same thing. uh, Writing them on stream, I've gotten to where my notes tend to be just like names and a few items that may show up, so I don't have to think up those details. But then I'm just kind of pantsing it. I'm just making up these stories as I go, and then doing a lot of fixing and editing. In terms of trying to plan a story so that it doesn't ramble, it helps if you kind of know the beginning and the end. So I find that if you kind of figure out where you're going to start and where you're going to end, that's good. And then if you kind of, I find that it helps if I think up a story idea and then kind of let it percolate for a little while. So if I kind of make up the title sometimes and attach the story idea to it, and then just think about it for a while, I can kind of figure out where it's going. And if you need an outline, like if you tend to ramble and you're trying to keep yourself on track, it may help to do story beats. So you kind of figure out where's the action. Um, and then when you get to the editing phase, sometimes that's when you can get a story down to the right size. So those are kind of the guidelines, I guess you'd say, to kind of figure out how long a story can be. Now, of course, a short story being anything from flash fiction up to 5,000 or even 5,000 or even 10,000 words. That's a huge difference. So some stories require that bigger space, and then some benefit from brevity, and you just kind of have to figure that out. Also, I find that it helps not to be fearful. Um, the idea that if you mess up a story, there's nothing stopping you from rewriting it or trying the same idea again a different way. So, like back to the beginning of what I was saying, sometimes you just kind of have to get a feel for writing the stories, and then figure out sort of where you're doing the where you're doing the good stuff. I guess you'd say. So I can mention toy names in a story just fine. They won't come after me for that kind of stuff. But probably if I were putting it into an anthology, then most likely I would probably change to some generic stuff. But I don't think it matters. You can mention toy names, same way as you can mention brands of cars, and you can mention a song by name as long as you're not quoting the lyrics and all that kind of stuff. I mean, typically, if I have record that I did something and the video serving as a record, I can prove that it's mine. Technically, nothing stops anyone from stealing a story, even if it's like in an anthology or anywhere else. They could copy it and redo it. There's also the idea that like someone could take an idea that I've already done and then make their own version of it that's just different enough to where I couldn't do anything with it. I don't have a lot of fear on that. Um, I put a lot of stories out on Patreon and other places too, but I write so many different stories that I'm not really concerned about anyone stealing them. And then the novels I put out and things like that, I got plenty of ideas, and if it came down to that, like you can have copyright infringement issues on Amazon. People will just copy a novel and put it up there, and then you got to go through all the rigmarole to fill out the right things and prove that it's yours to take it down. But even though it does happen occasionally, it is rare. Very few authors actually go through that. But in terms of sharing stories on here, I'm really not that concerned. Uh, the biggest problem with sharing a story on stream is that it's automatically a reprint. So the moment I finish this story, if I were to try to put it with a publisher, I would have to tell them it's been published before, in the sense that like it's shown up on video. I'll edit a video for YouTube. It'll be on Patreon. So I'm producing tons of stories on here, but the money I make from them is from Twitch, and is from Patreon. So, how long have you been writing and when did you start? All right, if you talk about writing poorly, I've been writing since I was a kid. The first story I was paid for was around 2010. Um, and I got like $5 for a zombie story, and then I kind of believed my own myth at that point. I believed I could do this. I've been writing full time since 2013. I really started that much earlier than I should have in terms of my skill and the money I had coming in, but I kind of like jumped, made the leap of faith and went on. I've been doing it on stream since about 2019, and seriously since late or mid 2020, and so reached affiliate status in January and started making money from it after that. And in a sense, we're all kind of taking the same types of stories. We're either doing the hero journey or subverting it. We're taking tropes and then trying to do something new with them. Whether it's fantasy, whether it's fairy tale, it's zombies, vampires, werewolves, or literary things, romance, relationships. So in a sense, we're all kind of taking the same ingredients and reworking them to try to come up with something new.